and I was looking at Frontier because, they have a million properties, and they're nice to you until you sign a lease, first of all. And then also, looking back at my experience, so there was 2 apartments that I really liked, and they said, sorry, it looks like someone just signed a lease here, so we're going to show you this other one. They recommended me one. And I was like, okay. And then, so I went to go see it, and it was clearly being worked on. Was like in the process of being worked on. And I was like, okay, so this will get a little better by the time I move in, because they're working on it. That was my impression. And I asked the guy, because this guy was giving me a tour, right? And I'm specifically asking him, and I'm recording it on video, by the way. That's what you do. Record video.
Right.
And then, so anyways, I was asking him questions. I asked him about pest control specifically. I asked him, is this going to be fixed? All this stuff that's being worked on, the walls patched up, all this stuff. I said, looks like there's a water leak, like from the ceiling, because it was a basement apartment. And he was like, oh yeah, they're still working on it. Like, it'll all be good when you move in. That's what they all say.
Yeah.
So, and at this time, another thing, I did not know this, because I've been, Jess, Jess.
Jess Kerr?
Yeah.
Yeah. She's the one who's working with us with the whole Allison Gary eviction.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's awesome.
So she's taught me a lot. I did not know this when I signed that lease. So I ended up signing the lease for the place they recommended. Anyways, so she taught me that there's this, I forgot what it's actually called, but if you move in somewhere and it's not as they told you it would be, it's in the tenant handbook, I believe, but if it's not what they said it would be within 5 days, you can like end your lease, basically. I can't remember what it's like the actual statute is or whatever, but so I got my keys and I paid a full month's rent, and it wasn't what they said it would be. And I could not move in. Like, it smelled like urine, and at the time I thought it was because it was a pet-friendly house, and I thought, like, once they cleaned it really good, it would be fine. However, they didn't even clean it, because it was in the middle of the pandemic, so I brought my Clorox wipes, and I, like, wiped, and it was not even clean. And so I was like, okay, they didn't even clean this. Like, the walls aren't patched even like they said it would be. Like, it was just not. And so I call my lease property manager, and then I sent emails about it. And anyways, they sent people to work on it, couldn't even move in for another 2 weeks. And they didn't even offer me like anything. I wasn't even living there for 2 weeks. And then, and I paid another month. That was like, I paid 2 months rent that month because I made sure I had time to move. I would have been screwed if I didn't at this point, because when it's really hard to find move good transition time, you know what I mean? To move.
Yeah, exactly. When you're not working, you're not doing anything. And
yeah. And so
it takes a long time too, and figure out how to move stuff. Like, are you going to rent a truck or borrow some friend?
Make friends help you.
Yeah.
So, or make my family drive 2 hours to help me, and my stepdad has a truck, but then I'd feel bad because they have to take off work. And so anyways, I just paid 2 months rent. One, I just made sure I had a good month to get my crap together, be able to move everything. And I'm glad I did, because I couldn't even move in for another 2 weeks. So I would have been homeless. I don't even know what I would have done if my lease was done and then I was supposed to move into I would have had to move into a gross urine infest and then deal with them working on it for another 2 weeks. That would have been so annoying. So anyways, long story short, I noticed things were not cool, real quick. 2 weeks. The first week I actually moved in there, I heard weird noises in my walls. And this is so crazy. My story is so bizarre. But I heard weird noises in my walls. I was in the basement, so I was like, okay, I have to catch some mice. I grew up in places where we had mice, and my mom was like, it's not that big deal. I've had mice in most of my houses growing up. And so I was like, okay, fine, I'll be a big girl, whatever. I guess this is adulting. And so I put some traps out, and I was like, okay, this isn't gonna be fun, but okay. And so I waited. Then I started like hearing more noises and like screeching, like weird screeching. And I was like, okay, this seems weird. And by the way, I was emailing Kale, Mr. Kale Hubert. If I'm just gonna expose him, I don't even care. He was my property manager at Frontier, and he's a terrible human being. He did nothing to help me. So this story gets so crazy. So I kept emailing him, and he was like, I hope it's a squirrel or something. That's literally what he said. And I was like, okay. And so then I put the traps out. I was like, okay, we're going to see. And one night my dog heard something in a trap, and he was like, I hear something. And so I went and looked, and it was moving around on there still. And I was like, oh Lord. And it was dark. It was like late at night. They came out late at night, the critters. And then I was like, what is that? That's not a mouse. And I was scared, and I called my dad and cried for a long time because I didn't even know what it was. I was just like, that's not a mouse. And so I was too scared to like take care of it, you know? And
Yeah.
I was like, I called my dad crying, and I was like, I'm going to wait till the morning and figure out what to do. Okay, morning comes, and I just look down, and I realized, because I worked at the rabies lab for like almost 3 years. No, almost, I can't even remember. For a long time, I worked at the rabies lab. We'd get bats in the mail because like they carry rabies a lot. And I've seen bats get diagnosed with rabies, like multiple bats a year in Kansas. And so I saw that bat on there, and I was like, oh, this is a whole different ball game here. And so I, of course, like I didn't even, it's looking back, it's kind of a mistake. I should have followed it up with an email, but of course I just called my property manager, like raging, like, because, okay, I forgot something. So 2 weeks after I moved in, a random guy came up to, like, was in my front lawn, and I had just gotten groceries, and he doesn't even have like a company logo, no mask on, nothing. And he's staring at me when I pull up, and I'm like, who is this creep? And he's like, I'm here to look for bats. And I was like, what? And he was like, yeah, were you complaining about bats? And I said, no, I've been complaining about noises in my walls, but a girl just moved out from the apartment above me. And so I said, did she complain? And he was like, oh yeah, that's the apartment I'm supposed to go to. And so I was like, and it was a top floor apartment, and there's an attic up there. So then at that moment, I was like, what? I kind of knew what was going on, but then when I caught the first bat, I was like, okay, they knew this was going on. And so then I call him enraged, and I'm like, if there was a bat issue, I would have liked to know what was going on. And I called him when that random guy came too and said the same thing. And he said, I can assure you there's no bat problem. We had someone confirm it was taken care of. And I'm like, I don't care. You should have told me this was an issue, like, ever. Like, and so then, because if they're making their way to the basement, because I did lots of research on bats after this, I've learned some interesting things. If they make their way to the basement, it's like an infestation, let me tell you. Like, so, and if they're in the walls, urine and guano is like in the wall. Guano is really bad for you, by the way. It can make you have like histoplasmosis and all this other stuff. And so anyways, I was just like, this is bad. And so basically it took me emailing them like every single week, if not more. No, most definitely more. Sometimes I would go back and forth with him like every day. And he kept sending the same. So, okay, I did research also. So something people should know is like Frontier. You probably know this, like different people own different houses. Like sometimes Frontier owns the property themselves, but like most of the time it's some other slumlord that you have to dig on to find out that they're super shady. The Hallman brothers, for example. And so I started digging on that, and they just hire out some random dudes for their maintenance company. And they kept coming and just throwing up bat houses behind my house, which I later found out is actually worse because then they just find a home and they never go away. So
Yeah.
they just kept throwing bat houses up. He put foam in one of the holes that they were coming through into my apartment, which they can chew through that because they're like mice. They can chew through things. And it got worse and worse and worse. And it got to the point where every single night they were flying around my apartment. Like,
Wow.
yeah, I have a
That's
video.
nuts.
So then I found the girl because I'm like an FBI agent, and I found the girl that lived there before me, like last year. The only reason she got let out of her lease was because it flooded. So that's why they were like doing so much work on my apartment when I first moved in. But she had videos of bats flying around the whole time she lived there. For months. She lived there for 9 months, and I lived there for not even 6 months. So, I mean,
Wow.
3 months. So I lived there for, I think, 3 months, like, total that I actually lived there. Like, my lease is technically still going because they refused to let me out of it, which is a whole nother story. So that's what's crazy to me is the couple they're trying to evict them was crazy is, so like they're trying to end their lease and like evict people and stuff, but then it's also so hard to get out of a lease even if they didn't do their jobs as landlords. For example, they also would not give any notice when maintenance came multiple times. The majority of the time, I didn't know that they were showing up, and they, like I said, they were guys that didn't have any company shirts on. They didn't have masks on most of the time until I complained about that, and then they started wearing them. And they were coming in my house. So one morning, I woke up to a guy like screaming and pounding on my door, and I was like half awake, so I was just like, okay, that's probably like a mistake. They'll just go away. And then apparently it was the maintenance guy because he proceeded to come inside, and I got out of bed and I was like, who even are you? And I threatened to tase him because I lived by myself, and I
Yeah.
have had experiences where I've had to call the cops because like drunk guys were knocking on my apartment before. But like never have I had someone like random in my apartment, and I have a taser, so I was like, I'm gonna tase you, like, he was
Yeah.
like, I'm just changing your air filter, and I was like, why didn't you tell me you're coming? And then apparently Frontier was supposed to, and then Frontier like kept telling me that they didn't even know the maintenance guys were supposed to be coming. And then the maintenance guy, one time the boss maintenance guy was there, and I confronted him about it, and he was like, I have paperwork proving that they knew we were coming. So I confronted Kale about it eventually because I had a code inspection, and he came to follow up with the code inspection because there was guano, because like I said, they were flying around everywhere. So there was guano in my furniture, the
Oh
bats.
my
I
God.
put up a camera, like a Wise cam, and there was bat living in my recliner during the day, and then like at night it would come out and fly around, and so there was like guano in my stuff.
Ooh.
And it was just terrible. And then he came to look at it, and I showed him the guano, and he goes, And then I also had my front door was messed up, and he was like, I'll send someone to fix your front door today, though. But they couldn't just send someone to clean up the guano today. Like, the guano
Yeah.
sat there until I confronted him in court about it, and then they had a professional cleaning company come clean my apartment
Did you have
after
to
I
hire
moved
like
out.
a legal representation?
No, I actually just went to small claims because I was hoping that would scare them, which I should have known better, because it's Frontier. But I was hoping that would scare them, and they would let me out of my lease. I got money for my recliner that was ruined, but that's all I got. And then I went up to him after court, and I was like, if you're not going to let me out of my lease, my attorney won't contact you. I was so mad. And then I realized after that, I was like, shit, I have to find an attorney. Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to say that.
That's fine.
But But yeah, I was like, oh crap, now I have to find an attorney. And so then I was like, okay, so this is actually something that I found to be an issue as well, is that it was so hard to find legal representation. No one wanted to take them on. No one. No one.
That's
I've
how it's
had,
been for the Alice and Gary eviction case. It's just like nobody
it's
wants to touch it
terrible.
because it's just like they can just point to that's their property. They can do what they want. Like,
Yep,
well,
it's
this
terrible.
is our
Ugh.
homes.
And then, well, the problem with Frontier is they always revert to, we don't even own this property. It's up to the owners. All we can do is communicate like between you two kind of thing. And I'm like,
Mhm.
but at the end of the day, I signed a lease through you. You have a responsibility. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and so, because there's something in the tenant handbook called like warrant of habitability and stuff. Like, there's a warranty that like, or it's expected that when you move in somewhere, they're promising you, you know, like this is safe, this is gonna like you can live here a normal life, you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
habitable. And so, and then they wouldn't pay for rabies vaccinations if I got bit, because I almost got bit one time, and they refused to pay for rabies vaccinations for me or my pets because I was working at this time 2 different jobs. I was
Oh
working
my
2 jobs. One of them I traveled for. So when I traveled on the weekends, I would leave like a lot of, because I have a cat, I would leave a lot of food and water for her. And like, I would only be gone one night, but I would be gone like 24 hours, you know what I mean? And
Mhm.
I would be anxious because I'm like, are there bats? Like, is she fighting with bats right now? Because she's sassy. She would try to fight the bat. I know she would. And then she would
Yeah.
get bit, you know what I mean? And then
Mhm.
she's old as crap. I know she would not survive rabies, like, because she's super
Yeah.
old. And like, I just couldn't. And then the bills, if I had to rush her to like the emergency vet if I found out she got bit or something, like, and then
Mhm.
they wouldn't even help with that. And if you don't know this, rabies vaccinations are not covered by most insurances, and they're like, you have to get around like round and round and round of them, and they're like thousands of dollars. They're like, because I want to go to vet school, so I'm gonna have to get it eventually. But they're super
Yeah.
expensive. People like you, no one can just afford $2,500 for a rabies vaccination. You know, like I don't have that laying
Yeah.
around, and they wouldn't even pay for it. So like that was a huge issue. Is they wouldn't even take any responsibility for what they put me into. So I just felt powerless, and then I couldn't even find an attorney. And so I'm literally, the only option is my mom is co-signing, and she's super mad about it because she's like, I don't want this affecting my credit if they try to come for us and stuff, and I can't afford 2 rents. So she had to help me pay my old rent there. And that makes me feel bad because like I but that's the situation I've been put into, and if I don't pay rent there, then they could evict me, and then I'd have an eviction on my record, and then my mom's credit score, my credit score would be screwed. And then, you know, like
Mhm.
I don't want to deal with all that. And so the only option is to have someone sublease, like someone take my lease over there. And then I feel bad for whoever I'm putting into their hands, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
it just sucks. I just feel powerless against them. And that's why I went to the collegian about it, because I was like, I at least want people to know about
Yeah.
it. And because I never would have imagined being in that kind of situation. I mean, like I said, it's bizarre, very bizarre what you can end up with.